One side of me says, I'd like to talk to her, date her. The other side of me says, I wonder how her head would look on a stick. This chilling quote comes from famous serial killer Edmund Kemper. He killed 10 people, including his own mother and grandparents, in extremely cruel ways, yet he was the favorite patient of many psychiatrists and a model prisoner. This story, as many others do, begins with the mother. On April 20, 1973, 52-year-old Clanell Stenberg woke up when her son Kemper was returning home from a party. Kemper said goodnight to his mother and went back to his room, but he did not go to sleep. Instead, he waited until his mother fell asleep and quietly returned to her room. He then proceeded to hit her with a claw hammer and then slit her throat with a knife. Kemper then decapitated his mother's corpse and used the severed head to perform oral sex on himself. Lastly, he used it as a target for throwing darts. Kemper said, he put her head on a shelf and screamed at it for an hour, until eventually he smashed her face in. He also cut off her tongue and throat before throwing them in the garbage disposal. However, because the severed portion of the vocal cords was too malleable for the garbage disposal, it bounced back into the sink. That seemed appropriate, as much as she'd bitched and screamed and yelled at me over so many years, Kemper said later, sarcastically. However, it seemed killing his mother was Kemper's last mission. Before that, he had already killed 8 more people. It's all so appalling. Seeing this, I believe everyone will ask this question. Why does Edmund Kemper have such a strong hatred towards his mother? When we analyze his past experiences, we found out that Kemper's teenage years were actually twisted and dark. Since an early age, Kemper showed antisocial behaviors such as insect torture and animal cruelty. When he was only 10 years old, he buried a pet cat alive, and when the cat died, he dug it up and decapitated it. After that, he then hung its head on a pole. At 13, he killed another cat in the family, thinking it liked his sister more than him. He hid the cat's corpse in a closet until his mother found it. Meanwhile, Kemper had some very dark fancies. He would perform rituals on his sister's rag doll, cutting off its head and limbs. He also recalled that when he was a child, he would sneak out of the house, take his father's knife, and go to the teacher's house to spy on her through the window. He stated in later interviews that some of his favorite games as a child were gas chamber and electric chair, in which he had his sister tie him up and flip an imaginary switch. He would then fall to the ground and rise as if he was being executed. Kemper's father, a World War II veteran who tested nuclear weapons at the Pacific Proving Grounds, returned to California to work as an electrician. Kemper's mother Clanell often complained about her husband's menial status as an electrician, and his father described his wife like this. Suicide missions in wartime and the atomic bomb testings were nothing compared to living with Clanell. Kemper had a good relationship with his father and was devastated when his parents divorced. Since then, Kemper started being raised solely by his mother. It is reported that Clanell was a neurotic, bossy alcoholic who constantly belittled, humiliated, and abused him. Clanell often locked her son overnight in the basement because he said Kemper would rape his sisters. Clanell also often mocked his size. Kemper was 1.9 meters tall at the age of 15 and called him a real weirdo behind his back. She also refused to express love to his son on the grounds that it would turn him gay, and often and repeatedly told Kemper that no woman would love him. In short, Clanell humiliated and abused Kemper to the extreme. Some speculate that Clanell suffered from borderline personality disorder, just as Christine Gilbert, the protagonist of our previous video. So, 14-year-old Kemper ran away from home and tried to join his father, but his father had formed a new family and sent Kemper to live with his grandparents. On August 29, 1964, 15-year-old Kemper shot and killed his grandmother and then his grandfather with a shotgun given to him by the latter. Why did Kemper kill his grandparents? According to Kemper himself, he just wanted to know what it was like to kill his grandma, and he killed his grandfather so that he wouldn't have to know the pain of having his wife die. Kemper said he was grateful for everything his grandfather had done for him. He just had a bad relationship with his grandmother. After killing his grandparents, Kemper called the police on his mother's suggestion. He was sent to a hospital for the mentally ill and diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia. However, some psychiatrists disagreed. They believed that Kemper was clear-headed and had no delusions or hallucinations. Kemper underwent 2 IQ tests and scored above 140 points eventually. While in custody, Kemper has always been considered a model prisoner, loved by doctors and even cooperated with doctors to develop various personality tests and skills. Kemper later admitted after his arrest that understanding how the tests work did help him manipulate psychiatrists. On December 18, 1969, Kemper's 21st birthday, he was released on parole to live with his mother. Kemper further certificated his recovery to his psychiatrist, who permanently deleted his record. After parole, Kemper wanted to become a state trooper, but his hopes were dashed because of his height. He ended up working in the highway department. Although Kemper once moved out of his mother's house, he often had to return there due to financial reasons. While driving, Kemper noticed a lot of young women hitchhiking, so he started storing tools like plastic bags, knives, blankets, and handcuffs in his car. So Kemper embarked on his twisted journey again. Between May 1972 and April 1973, Kemper murdered 6 female hitchhikers. He would take these schoolgirls to remote locations where he would kill them by shooting, stabbing, or suffocating. He would then take their bodies home, where he decapitated them, gave himself oral sex with their severed heads, had sex with their bodies, and finally mutilated them. As mentioned before, these victims were not the end. His mother was next. After killing his mother, Kemper proceeded to kill his mother's best friend, Sally Hallett, in the same way. Kemper's murderous journey had finally come to an end. Kemper's rapine abuse and the murder of women brings another common question into the discussion. Why do serial killers always target women? The composition of the victims of serial killers is actually diverse, but if we look at the specific data, we will find that female victims do occupy a considerable proportion. According to the FBI, women accounted for 70% of the 1398 known serial killer victims between 1985 and 2010. By comparison, women accounted for only 22% of all other homicide victims in the United States during the same period. That is to say, the likelihood of the victim being a woman in a serial homicide is 3.5 times that of a woman in a non-serial killer homicide. In ordinary murders and serial killings, the motives of the murderers are completely different. Therefore, before we can figure out why serial killers often target women, we must first figure out their motives for killing. If the motivation of most female serial killers is to seek money, the motivation of male serial killers is more complicated. According to statistics, sex is the main motive of approximately 50% of male serial killers. However, sex is not their only motivation. As Mark Hiltz, head of the FBI's Second Behavioral Analysis Unit, explains, sex can be a motivation, but it's a motivation in conjunction with something else. The something else here, such as sadism, thrill-seeking, or a desire for power and control. So it makes sense that when heterosexual male serial killers kill out of sexual urges, they target women. Having bad experiences with women is also one of the reasons why many male serial killers target female victims. For example, being rejected by women. Killing women allows men to possess them without being rejected. Additionally, bad relationships with their mothers, are an important reason why many male serial killers are full of sadistic desires towards women, hate born out of resentment. Kemper's mother, Clanell, abused him for a long time, which made Kemper's heart accumulate a deep hatred for his mother.
And very sad woman. I hated her, but I wanted to love my mother. And I watched the alcohol increase. I watched her social life drop off. I watched her get bizarre. She had terrible pain from her life. For 7 years, she said, I haven't had sex with a man because of you, my murderous son. It's one of our arguments. I cut off her head, and I humiliated her corpse. So there, you know?
Kemper recalled that every time he had an argument with his mother, he would drive out and look for female students. Obviously, this is Kemper's way of expressing his dissatisfaction with his mother. So how did Kemper transfer his hatred of his mother to other female victims? Kemper once severed the head of one of his victims and buried it in his mother's garden in a position that made the head look up at her bedroom window. Kemper said, because she wants people to respect and look up to her. It can be seen that although Kemper desperately wants to escape from his mother's control on the one hand, on the other hand, he's extremely obedient and flattering to his mother, a codependent relationship. Kemper's feelings for his mother are extremely strong and conflicted, a love-hate relationship. In other words, Kemper's hatred hides his fear of his mother and his desire for maternal love. This complex emotion made Kemper had no courage to face his hatred for his mother, so he first chose the substitute for his mother, those innocent female students. He imagined himself taking back control over his mother by killing them and then destroying and humiliating the corpse. What Kemper did to his female victims was a kind of a rehearsal. He practiced it over and over again until he could muster up the courage to face his real target. It's in our biology to want a mother's love and acceptance, but the more Kemper wanted it, the less he could get it. Sadly, the mother projects her prejudice and hatred towards men onto her son. And all Kemper does when he punishes his mother and rebels against her perception of men is just to keep proving the mother's right. All of this is more like Kemper using his own misogyny to resist his mother's misandry. With all of this heaping up, the story can only end in tragedy. After killing his mother, Kemper turned himself in to the place. When asked why he turned himself in, Kemper replied, "The original purpose was gone. It wasn't serving any physical or real or emotional purpose. It was just a pure waste of time. Emotionally, I couldn't handle it much longer. Toward the end there, I started feeling the folly of the whole damn thing, and at the point of near exhaustion, near collapse, I just said to hell with it and cut it all off." In fact, killing his mother was Kemper's ultimate goal. With the completion of this mission, Kemper's hatred for his mother vanished, and the desire for love hidden under this hate soon followed. His motivation was now lost. In addition, the deep-rooted misogyny in the social culture undoubtedly contributes to the fact that women often become victims. Additionally, the weakness of some women's physiology makes them easy targets for serial killers. On May 7, 1973, Kemper was indicted on 8 counts of first-degree murder. It has been established that Kemper was sane and of sound mind when he committed the crimes. Kemper demanded the death penalty for himself, emphasizing that he wanted to be dead by torture. He was sentenced to 7 years in prison for each count, thanks to a moratorium on executions by the California Supreme Court. In prison, Kemper again proved to be a model prisoner and very likable. He was in charge of arranging meetings with psychiatrists for other prisoners and was an accomplished pottery mug maker. He is also a prolific audiobook narrator. A Los Angeles Times article from 1987 noted that Kemper had spent more than 5,000 hours dubbing hundreds of books. While incarcerated, Kemper participated in numerous interviews and was candid about his crimes. FBI profiler John Douglas described Kemper as among the brightest prison inmates he had interviewed and capable of real insight for a violent criminal. He further added that he personally liked Kemper, calling him friendly, open, sensitive, and with a good sense of humor. Kemper has also used his intelligence to manipulate his cellmate, a notorious serial killer named Herbert Mullin. Kemper said Mullin had a habit of sitting and bothering people when somebody tried to watch TV, so I threw water on him to shut him up. Then, when he was a good boy, I gave him peanuts. Herbie liked peanuts. That was effective because pretty soon he asked permission to sing. That's called behavior modification treatment. Of course, no matter how well Kemper behaves in prison, many people believe that Kemper's inner anger towards women has not been resolved and is still quite dangerous to society. He said, "Society is not ready in any shape or form for me. I can't fault them for that." Prosecutor, the officer said, "We don't care how much of the model prisoner he is because of the enormity of his crimes." Kemper was given a chance to apply for parole in 2024. It is undeniable that Kemper's family's circumstances and his upbringing are important factors in the sick tragedy that put him where he is now. But this does not excuse his brutal crimes. Not everyone who has been hurt by their family chooses to become a serial killer. After all, at some point in our lives, we need to make our own decisions and be responsible for them. The best years of your life are the ones in which you decide your problems are your own. You do not blame them on your mother, the ecology, or the president. You realize that you control your own destiny. Albert Ellis.